Welcome to Leaders in Lending. I'm your host, Jeff Keltner. This week's episode features my conversation with Bob Fisher, the president and CEO of Tioga Bank, a community bank in New York State. Bob and I talked through his approach to fintech partnerships, why he thinks being effective with fintech partnerships is really crucial to the community banking space in the future, the willingness and how they think about the willingness to pull the plug on stuff that's not working, how to make things work with fintech partners, things that have gone well, things that haven't, where he's got his eye in the future. And then we also talk about their decision recently to set up a foundation to help with their giving back to the community. This has been a thread in a number of conversations with community banks recently, the investing in the local communities through something like a foundation or a more structured giving program. I think it's a great idea. Loved hearing about the work they're doing there from Bob. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. This is my conversation with Bob Fisher. Bob, welcome to the podcast, and thanks for making the time to join us today. I really appreciate it.
So good to be here, and thanks for the invite.
Yeah, so I've begun asking all my guests this to start, so let's just start here. Tell me a little bit about, how most of us didn't grow up. We were just talking about P-51s and World War II aircraft and being in the Air Force, and most of us didn't grow up going, I'm going to be a banker when I'm an adult. So tell me a little bit about the path that brought you into the space in general and into your role now particularly.
Yeah, in fact, so I am a fifth generation community banker, which I don't think, there's a whole lot of fifth generation community bankers out there.
I feel like there should be like the Daughters of the American Revolution. We need something like that for somebody who's got a family lineage that far back in the banking space. I don't know. I'll have to talk to ICBA or somebody about how you find that, but that seems pretty unique to me, actually.
So if you'd asked me in high school or college, I would have sworn to you I was never going to be a community banker. So I had dreams of becoming a pilot. Unfortunately, I found out in the Air Force, or actually in college, I found out that I lacked 20/20 vision. So instead of becoming a pilot, I became a navigator in the U.S. Air Force. And unfortunately, there is no need for a navigator commercially in aviation today. So it was a kind of a unique role in the Air Force. And my wife and I were starting to think about having kids and decided that going back to the family business of community banking was probably not a bad idea. And fortunately for me, I was also a finance major in college, so it worked out pretty well.
The finance, now I got to understand, you swore off the family business of community banking, but majored in finance. There's like a little hedging of the bets. Was Dad sitting there going, maybe he says no, but the finance major says maybe yes?
I think partly that, but it was also, I was started out as an electrical engineer, and physics and I did not get along well. So
I understand that. I finished my almost all electrical engineering, but if it had required chemistry, that was my physics I got, but chemistry was my nemesis. I couldn't to this day. Not, and my kids haven't quite gotten there in school. I kind of live in fear of the time they get to chemistry and start asking me for help. And I go, I have no idea what that means.
Yeah, thank God my kids have all successfully navigated school and haven't needed help in any of their subjects. So they're a lot smarter than I ever was.
So I wanted to talk to you. You've kind of, have an approach to partnering with fintechs and how you think about the purpose and how you go about that and your mentality around it that I think is actually quite interesting and informative for the audience. So maybe I'll just start by opening up kind of what is it that makes you think that partnering with fintechs is an important thing for you as a community bank? I mean, there's certainly those in the community banking space that go, technology, man, we serve small communities. We serve them the way we've always served them. It's fine. And you've clearly taken a different approach. What's the driver for you in thinking these kinds of partnerships are part of the strategy you need moving forward?
I just think that community banks, if we want to stay relevant and stay providing the services that our customers are demanding, I think we need to partner with fintechs to provide some unique solutions and things to just remain relevant in the space. I'm not a big enough shop that I can't have developers, and my R&D budget's pretty small compared to a lot of the big banks. So I think I need to partner with other folks that are doing some really cool stuff out there.
So talk to me about some of the things you've done. I kind of want to walk through some examples because I think it's really illustrative of the mentality and approach you've taken that I think kind of differ from, I hear this from a lot of people who've been successful in pursuing partnerships, that it doesn't sound like the traditional financial services mentality to launching a project, launching a product, building a partnership, which tends to be large and boil the ocean and take a long time and kind of have the right answer in mind way back at the beginning. And I think you guys have taken a kind of different approach. So I'd love to just use one or two examples to dive into how you think about that.
Yeah, I think we've been willing to kind of partner with some of these fintechs, which are virtually, I mean, they're very similar to a lot of the businesses that we deal with on a daily basis. But even some of them are fledgling businesses, so their financials maybe not that great, but they're doing some really neat stuff. Like we've partnered with a company. One venture we tried was online banking to try and do some small business loan origination, and I think we were probably a little early to the to try and start that. It didn't really work out for us. The partner, they were a great partner. They had a great model, but it just things never came together, and we really didn't originate many, if any, loans from that process. So I think what we learned from that initial launch of trying to partner with a new company, a fintech, was that you can't be afraid to fail. You can't be afraid to say, okay, this one didn't work. Let's pull the plug and move on to the next thing. And I think growing up on the credit side of the house and having my dad tell me that, we've got to be right 99.8% of the time or else we potentially will lose money. So it's a completely different mentality when you're partnering with a fintech, because some are going to work really well, some are not going to work well, and you need to be willing to pull that plug if it's not working the way you thought it would. So that was kind of a one that didn't work. We've also partnered with a company that does cybersecurity training for our staff. They do some phishing testing and put out some emails, but you also get feedback, and it's that one's worked out brilliant. Yeah, I can't say the word amazingly. So if you can't say the word, change to a different word, right?
That's right. So I want to come back and ask you two things about the first project, then we'll dive into the second one. I often think, we learn more from our failures than our successes in many ways, because, there's, maybe Twitter's my favorite example as I'm listening to the podcast on the whatever you want to think is happening to Twitter or X as Elon Musk has bought it. I don't think they ever knew what they got right. Like they clearly did something right, but I don't think they ever really knew what it was, because the lessons of success can be pretty vague. But the lessons of failure can be more. But my questions are twofold. One, when I start, the idea of sometimes you just have to pull the plug and being comfortable with that as an acceptable outcome. It's easy to state that intellectually. It's another thing to actually live that in the company. And I think most people, if I were a mid-level employee that heard that, I go, that's what they say. But if I'm the guy running the project that gets the plug pulled, I don't think that's good for, my career moving forward. And so the organizational inertia, the natural tendency for people is to avoid those things, to avoid taking those risks. And so I love the mentality, but my question is kind of like, how do you actually build that within the organization, where I think the natural inclination of most people, particularly most people who've grown up in the business where you expect to be right 99.8% of the time, is to think that I don't want to be involved in this thing that might get the plug pulled, because that's not going to be good for me and it won't be seen as a success. And that to me, how you get the organization on board and supporting people who are taking those risks and making those attempts, even if they don't work. That's one of the hard questions. I'm curious how you think about, building that into the organization.
I think, that kind of comes from the top down. That's something that I think I've been willing to take some of those chances and to work with companies that may or may not be the right fit for us. But, you do a lot of legwork, you do a lot of insight, trying to make sure the company's providing the solution that you're looking for, that will actually help either improve the customer experience or help improve efficiency on the back end. And so, and what I've tried to do as far as here at the bank is be very inclusive of my whole team, my senior management team. So we've sat through, ICBA has a Think Tech, which is it's an accelerator program for different fintechs. And so every year that they've been doing it, I've had my entire senior management team. We sit through the whole, it used to be a full day, now it's a half day, but you sit through and listen to the different companies make their pitches. So I think just opening people's eyes to that, being willing to say, hey, nobody lost their job when we partnered with the loan origination company. It didn't work. We learned our lesson and we moved on. So I think just being open to that failure, and I think, as you said, sometimes you learn more from your failures than you do from your successes. So we kind of understood what didn't work, and so you just have to be willing to move forward.
How do you think about when it always sounds easy in retrospect to say, well, it didn't work out and we pulled the plug. But I think there's always this tension between, are we one turn of the crank on the marketing engine that we didn't have quite right from this thing, taking off and really working, or like understanding. I always love that there's all these little sayings, and I often tell people that there's lots of sayings that mean the opposite thing. They've got the, persistence is brilliance, and they've got trying the same thing over and over, expecting different results as the definition of a saying. You kind of go, well, what's kind of mean, the different things. And the wisdom is kind of understanding when which one applies, which is to say there's no simple answer. But the question of like, how do you think about understanding when you've said, hey, this is not working, we need to pull the plug, and when you go, hey, we just need to double down, or of course, with a new product that's maybe online when we used to be in person, we need to try a different marketing technique, or it'll take a while for customers to adapt, or, we need to wait it out and give it some time. How do you think about, when you're looking at something that's not going well, when it's like time to pull the plug and when it's time to put a little more resource into figuring out how you get it working better?
So I mean, it's a difficult call because I think there are a lot of different variables. Did you not market it correctly, as you kind of brought up? So I think for the small business loan origination, we tried it for 3 years. It just never got traction, and the applications we did attract were applications that just were not bankable deals. So we just said the timing's not right for this. Let's move. We can come back and revisit it down the road. Maybe the timing just maybe the market wasn't ready for the solution, or there were other solutions that were better solutions out there. So we made the decision to just kind of cut bait and move on. So, but I think that decision it's going to be different depending on what you're trying to do. I think if you give it 2 to 3 years and it's not working and it's not, a huge burden on the bank, then cut the cord and move along to something else.
Yeah, I like that message of a huge burden on the bank. I think that's another thing that I so often see in these partnerships that slows them down, is the sense of like, I need everything to be so good it could run my whole book. Like the sense of the diligence has got to be the same diligence I would put my mortgage portfolio if I was going to touch that. And you go, well, but you're not. You're talking about doing something different, and that often stands in the way of to what you said, trying something new. It's like, well, I put it through such the ringer that nothing is going to pass through that, and I've just kind of essentially made an airtight sieve. I'm curious how you think about that in getting the organization to think about the scale of what you're doing as one of the risk mitigants in terms of how far on the bleeding edge or new of a thing you might be comfortable trying, because that's a little different, I think, again, than some risk organizations that are kind of look at everything as a binary, like it's either good enough for the bank or it's not. They don't think of it as, is it good enough for the scale we want to try, for a first attempt, for a pilot program, whatever it might be.
Yeah, I think, you need to be willing to take that chance and try something different. Obviously, you don't want to bet the bank. We have a certain amount of capital. So, just like we have on the credit side, we have an in-house lending limit that's a lot lower than what the legal lending limit is. We'll make bets with some of these companies, and as long as it's not something that's going to put the bank in jeopardy, if it looks like it's something that's promising that can help us create efficiency or scale, help with the customer experience. A lot of things are customer experience focused. We tried a landlord security deposit. We do a lot of lending to mobile home parks. So they all have deposits that they have to keep. And so we tried a company that provided a solution that just made the experience a little bit better for those landlords.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. You were mentioning a different, not brilliant. I forget what you were trying to say brilliant and then missed it and came up with amazing, I think. What was the other partnership you were talking about? I'd love to hear a little bit about that one as well.
So it's a cybersecurity training that we do. We had been working with a very well known, nationally known brand for doing a lot of our phishing and training. And there was a company that went through the ICBA FinTech Accelerator, and they've just been a tremendous partner for the bank. The users actually get real time feedback. So if you submit something that you think may be a phish, and if it's immediate feedback if it was one of their attempts to phish you, but if it's something that you just think looks fishy and you want to report it, it'll you get immediate feedback that says, okay, well, we think that was maybe a 3 out of 10 as far as a potential phish on the scale. So um, they've just in the training that they have is top notch training. Um, So and the cost factor was actually, I think it was slightly cheaper than the other company that we had been working with. So it's just been they've been a tremendous partner, and I can't say enough positive things about them.
It's such an interesting space too, because it is one of these things that everybody needs. I do feel like a little bit like a game. Like as a guy with a technical background, I feel like I'm judged harshly if I don't identify the call people and properly identify. And I call the IT team going, did I catch it? Did I get it right? I found one today. Was that you guys? Or is that a legit fish? Because we did get legit phishing scams coming through too. That's an interesting space. You've mentioned a couple times the ICBA program. Tell me a little bit about that. It feels like you found some value in what's going on through ICBA in terms of identifying potential partners or organizations that it might make sense to work with.
Yeah. So for about 5 years, ICBA has had they call it their ICBA Think Tech Accelerator program, and it's every year. In the past, they used to bring 10 to 12 companies in that would provide different solutions, either revenue enhancement, efficiency, whatever, different fintech companies that were looking to partner with community banks. And so I was part of the selection committee. I mean, we used to have to review 30, 40 different companies that would hear their pitches and then narrow it down to 10 companies. And I know they picked out a lot, kind of flushed out to get us down to 30 to 40 that we would talk to. But it's really been opened my eyes to see some of the different companies, some of the different ideas that are out there to help community banks and just in the financial space to help improve our business and make that enhance the customer experience. So, but ICBA is doing some super cool stuff down that road, and I'm really fortunate and feel very fortunate that I've been able to be on that selection committee and participate.
Have you seen a decrease? I mean, as someone who's been in more of the startup side version of this, like certainly the sense that fintech had its moment, and now fintech is, a lot of the valuations of the companies that have gone public have been reduced a lot, and the sense that there is a little bit less flow of juice into that environment than maybe there was a couple of years ago when it didn't take as much. And there's AI has sucked up a lot of the oxygen in the early stage company funding environment right now, is everybody's trying to figure out what ChatGPT and whatever DALL-E and these things mean for the future of technology. I'm curious if you've seen a change in the number or the quality of people coming into, or fintechs that you're seeing through a program like that, or just in general over the last couple of years as we've seen these kind of different pressures on the startup environment.
Yeah, and I would say just the opposite for the Think Tech Accelerator. The quality of the companies that they get year in and year out that are coming to try and work with community banks is, I'd say, the quality of the companies, the quality of the solutions has grown immensely over the past 5 years that I've been
That's
part
awesome.
of it. So
That's there are. I often do think that the when the money is not as free, the quality goes. I mean, the nature of lots of available money pretty easily is a lot of less well thought through business plans and less pressure on quality of execution and quality of team. And sometimes, a lot of the best businesses were really founded when money was tighter, when the economy wasn't great, when it wasn't like the great time to start a business because anybody could do it. And I think that forced upon them a focus on delivering value quickly and operating efficiently. So it's great to hear that you have not seen that. And the last thing I want to ask about the space is like, what are the what are the areas you've got your eye on in terms of as a community bank saying, here are the areas I'd like to see? I mean, there's kind of a version that is we look at the best in the fintech world and grab whatever is top of the pile. And then there's a version of this I think is like, hey, what are the areas that we could really use some innovation, a different experience, some issues within the organization, whether it's something like phishing education for our employees or different kinds of products. Like, where do you have your eyes saying, hey, here are areas I'm really curious about things coming down the pipe because they're strategic areas for us to be investing in partnerships in?
I mean, the obvious one that you just talked about is AI. I think AI is going to be hugely impactful to our business. It'll just provide a lot of insight and should make things easier for both customers and bankers on the back end. The I guess the thing that really kind of piques my interest as far as where the industry is going and is getting better insights into the data that we have. I mean, we have so much transactional information and customer information. Yet, as a community banker, I have zero idea how to use that information. So I think and I've seen some solutions that are getting better as far as trying to pull that data out, so we can be a lot more targeted as far as who we focus and advertise to and promote products to. Um, I think we need to be a lot smarter and focused on trying to get new business and finding clients that look like our very successful clients. And I think some analytics into some of the data that we have will really provide those insights, and that's what gets me excited about the future.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of this. I mean, I think I've said for a while that and I think ChatGPT has played to this, that the chatbots were sucking up all the AI oxygen. This idea that I was going to chat with some superhuman intelligence, and ChatGPT can feel that way, and sometimes it feels like I'm talking to a moody teenager. So it just kind of depends on how you get it. But I do think the idea of more basic models, looking at and drawing insights from data and helping you make smarter decisions about who to market to or who to put in certain products and what risk levels are they're really available and capable. They're capabilities that are out there today, and they're just waiting to be deployed against the data sets of community banks or other financial institutions, and have a tremendous amount of value to provide without having to feel like you're dealing with this question about like, is consciousness emerging in a chatbot or not, which is a fascinating debate, but not really the one we have to have a debate about to go and say, hey, I got a pile of data that I know tell me something. Can you help me figure out what the something should be that I can do it with? That's I think a little easier problem to solve. Other than AI, are there other areas like product categories you're interested in getting into, or digital capabilities, or things that you're saying, hey, this is really an area we'd love to see some ability to enhance?
I mean, I think there's some great solutions out there as far as online account opening for both loan and deposit side, and so we're looking at that now to find out some kind of best in class solutions that work for our bank. Unfortunately, most community banks, we have our major core processors that do most of our back office work, and oftentimes their solutions are not necessarily the best solutions that are out there on the market. So we're trying to figure out what's the best solution and how to integrate it into our core. So that's a challenge for a lot of us.
Yeah, the integration into the core and the providing that seamless cross product experience can be non-trivial, and everybody is struggling with exactly how to do that. Bob, before I let you go, I did want to dive into one other area that was, I will say unique, except I had a similar conversation with another guest just a couple of weeks ago, which was you guys have started a charitable foundation within the institution. Tell me a little bit about how that works, what the impetus was for doing that, and what it is you guys are trying to do.
So we've always been very charitable and giving to our community, and so probably 5 or 6 years ago, I wanted to formalize our giving, and we created this charitable foundation to give back to our community. I mean, as a community bank, our success is so dependent upon our community, and so our bank's been here for 160 years next year. And so I just thought, what a better way we put 5% of our net income, we donate it directly to the foundation, which gives back to our community. We do quarterly granting cycles every year. So we get people that make requests to get grants from the foundation. And it's great to see some of the projects that really help improve life in our local community, which is truly what it's all about with the foundation. So um, ultimately, I want the foundation to be able to outlive the bank. So
I always found that to be one of the really interesting, unique elements of community banks was the direct connection to that community they serve, and a more deep embedding in a way that digital banks or even large national banks just kind of, they're so big, there's a loss of that direct connection. So I think it's really, really a great idea. I'm curious, how do you think about managing? One of the questions I always get is like the number of orgs that can call either you as the head of the bank, or, is like calling up some random account manager going, hey, my son's little league team is fundraising. Like, how do you think about the criteria or the process by which you figure out? It's kind of nice to have an official process to go, hey, I can't like just write a check out of my, my expense account and support a little league or a bake sale or whatever. There's a process for that offloads, but it does mean you need some group or process or criteria by which you decide where you do and don't, and how you allocate those funds. How do you guys think about that side of the process?
it's actually it's helped us tremendously, because it does formalize that whole process of how people, if they want to get money from the foundation and from the bank, we can direct them to the website. There's a whole process of application form that they have to fill out. You have to be a certified not-for-profit company to be able to get funds. So no, it's really helped to formalize the process for us, so that I don't get somebody that's just calling me, and if they do call me, I can refer them over to the website to get complete the application. In fact, typically I am clean shaven, so I am every year we do a no shave November, and we do a 5K that we do to raise money and awareness for prostate cancer. So um, I can't stand not shaving. This is very unnatural for me, but it's what I do for the month of November. So
You do the full beard though, not just I know the guys who do the mustache, but that always looks like the pictures at the end of the month are really funky on the just mustache guys. So you went full beard for November.
we'll see. I may have to shave the sides and go to the goatee or something for it starts itching, and I just hard to get used to.
I have seen some guys who, when it gets to the end, there's like they try 3 different looks, right? It's grown in. They're like, I want to go full beard, goatee, just the mustache, just for kicks for a day or two. But I'm with you. Every time we're on vacation, my wife's like, you don't need to shave. And but after 3-4 days, I'm like, but I want to. I don't like that feeling. I need to be clean shaven. So it's not for everybody. Very cool. Well, I love to work with the foundation. I think it's a great model that I hope other financial institutions take up. It's really interesting to me that I've had 2 guests recently talk about doing this, and I think it's a great approach to supporting the communities.
And we're working with another fintech company that will help with a roundup program on your debit card. When you spend on your debit card, it will automatically round up, and people will be able to donate that money to their favorite local charity, which is the thing that really tied it in for us, was that they could make it to a local charity.
Oh, that's very cool. My kids get that, and I've got a kid's debit card for them, and they round up. It doesn't go to charity yet; it goes into their savings accounts. We're teaching them basic saving behavior, but maybe as they get a little bit older, we'll move into okay, you built up some savings. Now it's time to think about, how we round up your milkshake from $4.50 to $5 and put 50 cents into a charitable cause. So I start to get a sense of, what that looks like. That's a very cool program. Bob, I got 3 questions I like to ask everybody at the end of this podcast, and I feel like it's about time to do that. So are you ready for them? Go rapid fire. Excellent. The first question is, what's the best piece of career advice you've ever gotten?
So very early in my career here at the bank, with one of our senior managers, he sat me down one time and he said, Bob, sometimes it's easier to ask forgiveness than it is to ask for permission. So that has stuck with me through my entire career, as far as sometimes it's just easier to do something and ask for forgiveness down the road than it is to ask for permission on the front end. And I think that served us pretty well. So
that's a fascinating piece of advice, Bob, both because I've gotten it in my career and love it. And I don't think anybody in the banking industry I've asked this question has given that advice, because it feels very counter to the general financial services approach. I won't tell your chief risk officer that you gave the ask for forgiveness, not for permission answer, but it's fascinating to hear that from someone in this space, because it does feel counter to the natural inclination, but it's something, if you're in the technology space, it's one of the most common, things you'll hear people talk about, some version of this, just do it and ask for, figure out the rest later. If somebody doesn't like it, don't go around asking people for permission. So it's served you well in this industry, though. So I love to hear that.
And I think, the other thing too, sometimes like with my compliance officer, I'll be like, tell me how we do something. Don't tell me why we can't do it. I mean, that's.
That is it. Yeah. If you've got a compliance officer that can operate that way, I think that's, there's the best I think of the compliance officers and lawyers in similar roles. And the best lawyers I've met understand what the word counsel means. And they kind of go, my job's to help you find a way to do it within the bounds of the law, not to just sit around and say no. And so when you give me something that you can't do, it's not my job to say you can't do that. It's to figure out what's a version of this that we can do. What are the underlying objectives? How do we find a way to meet that? That's sounds like you've got a good culture there, because that's, I think, one of the key things to me in those functions that can turn into big no's is when they're really trying to be, how do we get to yes? Excellent. My second question is, what's the best advice you've ever gotten about the general banking or consumer banking, community banking space?
I was thinking about this one pretty hard, and I think, just that we are a service-based business, and that every decision we make should be customer-centric. We should think about the impact to the customer, because that's truly, as a community bank, I am totally relationship-based, and if I'm not thinking about how a decision is going to impact my customer, then I'm not doing my job. I just think we need to be so customer-focused and make sure that we're making decisions that are based on how that's going to make the impact, ultimately the impact of the customer.
So let me just ask, how do you drive? I think it's such a great answer. And I just finished reading Sam Walton's biography, and he probably embodied this mentality more than any business executive in history. I mean, I talk to more customers on a weekly basis than most of us do in a lifetime, the way he operated. But, what strikes me is it's easy to say that. And then it's also easy to have somebody running a lending program who gets the numbers on approval rates and loss rates and whatever, and is looking at it. And it's so easy to, in this business, it can be summarized in dozens of facts and figures and choices and how we configure returns on investment with a lending portfolio, that you lose sight of the person at the end of the way. I mean, I think it happens quite a bit, actually, particularly larger institutions. And I'm curious how you think about, particularly for your mid-level people, right, who have gotten beyond day-to-day interaction with customers maybe, and they're running a larger program, how you help them maintain that focus on the end customer as the ultimate thing, and how you make that a priority within the organization. Because it feels like the kind of thing that's easy to lose, particularly as you get a layer or two within the organization removed from sitting across the desk from a customer every day.
Yeah, and I think the beauty of we're a small community bank. I've got about 100 employees on staff. So I think, and we're a pretty flat organization. So I think, we're
everybody gets to talk to customers.
Sorry.
I said, so everybody gets to talk to customers on the regular. It's just part of
life.
Just
part of our culture, part of our life, of how we operate here. So I think, you just continue to emphasize that. You can never not emphasize it when you're around people, because repetition just continues to build that culture. So, and it's easy to forget, if you looking at operational sides of the bank, there's things that'll make our lives a hell of a lot easier, but it may not be a great impact to the customers. So we've had to make some of those tough choices.
Yeah, it's I think it's a great point. I always love that as a kind of core piece of advice. All right, my last question: what is one bold prediction for the future?
So I was going to make a sports guess and say the Yankees will win the World Series next year, but that, looking at how they played this year, that's probably not going to happen. So my bold prediction is that community banking will continue to be the partner of choice for small businesses throughout this country. I think, based on our relationship business model, innovative solutions, and our agility, that will win the day for community banking with small business.
It's a great bold prediction. I'll add to it that I think small business will continue to be the backbone of the American economy. So you put those two together, and it makes for two pretty important industries to support the American worker and the American consumer. So I can't think of a much better place to end it than that. Bob, thanks again for making the time. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate the time, and it's been a good conversation. Thanks.